From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events as reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
Well, hi there, and welcome to another edition of this program, Chicago Newsroom, here on Can TV. I'm Ken Davis. Thank you for joining us today. From time to time, we do talk about journalism and the collection of news and dissemination of news, and today's going to be one of those days because I have this prejudice that in the pantheon of journalism as we know it today, there's probably no harder job than working in local 9, 10 o'clock news as a general assignment reporter, because you just really kind of have to know everything. You have to know what's going on. You have to be able to parachute into the middle of a breaking story. They give you 15 minutes to interview somebody, come up to speed. You stand there with the microphone and they come to you and you look like you just know everything that's going on. It is a performance art that is beyond almost anything in the theater or the film industry or anything else. And I happen to know two of these guys who've been doing it for quite a while, and they're both here today. Paul Meincke's been here before, Channel 7. You've been at it you were at it for like 30 years or something,
30
right?
here, 43 overall.
Yeah, and you are now, how do we define you, quasi-retired?
Quasi-retired.
Yeah, like the rest of us, we're all quasi-retired. Yes. Yeah, nobody ever completely retired.
It's all a charade.
Yeah, I am quasi-retired, but not really retired from much of anything. However, here we are. And also Phil Rogers, who reminded me this morning that we met 71 years ago.
It was in October of 1978. I moved to Chicago October 1st of 1978, and you were one of the very first people I met.
I was working in the all-night newsroom at the Big 89 WLS, and you were dropping by there, and we met and talked there, and then our paths have been intertwined for decades. Yes. But anyway, we've never been able to get you on the little show until today, and I'm very happy to have you here. I should point out, Phil Rogers, if you don't know, is from Channel 5, NBC5, a service of Comcast.
Yes, 24 years.
24 years he's been there. So what I thought we would do today is try to sort of put some of these bigger stories that you guys have been covering for so long, into just some perspective. It's just kind of fun to sort of kids, some of the things that you think are news have been news for a very long time, right? Mm-hmm. And you guys have hung out in Springfield. You've kind of done it all. You've covered plane crashes. You've covered even bigger disasters than that, because you've been to Springfield and you've covered the various things that have happened.
It's a train wreck.
Right? Yeah, that's a train wreck, right? So, could I start with what's happening in Springfield right now? I mean, we'll let other people deal with the day-to-day stuff of what happened yesterday with Ken Dunkin. He bolted from the Democratic Party. One of the representatives actually went over, I understand, and ripped the thing off, the name tag off his chair and threw it across the aisle and said, "You've got him now, he's a Republican." What occurs to me is that in the long battle that's going on down there between Rauner and the leaders of the Democratic Party, I'm beginning to think Rauner's winning the long game.
I always preface these things by saying I don't know what I'm talking about, okay?
You don't know what you talk about, but you talk about it on TV.
But I'll now said that, I'll tell you my view as a pedestrian, and we have a very good reporter who covers this full-time, actually two of them, and I'm not one of them. Mm-hmm. So I'm viewing this as sort of a pedestrian. But I will tell you that I think my perception of Bruce Rauner, who I do not know, and I don't think Bruce Rauner knows who I am, but when I have had interactions with him, this is not your Jim Thompson kind of governor. This is not even a George Ryan kind of governor, or a Jim Edgar kind of governor, or even a Rod Blagojevich kind of governor, a guy who loved being governor. Rod Blagojevich loved being governor. Bruce Rauner doesn't really want to be governor. He doesn't have any interest in the governor stuff. He came here for only two reasons. He wants to fix the finances, and he wants to pull kind of a Scott Walker type revolution with the unions. Other than that, I don't think he cares. Paul and I saw him in was it Fairdale? Or no, not Fairdale, in Rochelle. Was that where he came to visit?
Right.
And
Both places.
Tornado aftermath or
yeah, tornado aftermath. And here's where I really formed my view on this, and that was he was walking through the damage down there and was bored, and was looking at his watch.
Yeah.
It was like, do I really have to do this? Because I really just want to go back to Springfield and take on Madigan again. I mean, to me, that's his deal. And all this other stuff of state government, I think he's really not very interested in. So what you're seeing unfold down there, this war with Madigan, is his full-time gig.
I'm also a pedestrian and I'm walking the wrong way down a one-way street, you see, on this issue. But I think you're right. I think the long game may belong to him because we are in such a mess. There hasn't been an event, apart from all the demonstrations about groups that have particular needs that aren't being met. There really hasn't been a big event because we're going month to month with a budget. We're all getting by. When toward the end of the year, there are those things that happen that kind of crumble the infrastructure even further, apart from the political theater, name tags being ripped off. When things stop working properly, then I think a lot of people are going to say, what's the constant over all these years? And the constant has been the leadership of Mike Madigan. That's not changed. So I don't think, as a result of all this, that what Madigan and the Democrats have defended, which is our way of life, core values, that's the constant refrain, I don't think that's going to erode. But I think there's going to be a compromise, and I think that Rauner will give on taxes, and they'll go up again. There's got to be some movement. Can't go on forever.
But can Madigan and Cullerton and even Rahm Emanuel, can they give on the union stuff? I mean, can they actually afford to do that? Will they find a way to do it creatively?
Well, they've had to do it. Emanuel didn't want to raise taxes either, but you have to find a way. So there's going to be some surrendering, I suspect, in order to reach a compromise. But it's a negotiating session, and everybody has to walk away from the table with some victory. Otherwise, you can't face your people.
I've had this sense that a lot of people in Springfield and people who are Rauner opponents are kind of playing the same delusional game that Wisconsin played, thinking, this is just a blip. This will be gone in 4 years. We just have to wait it out. We just got to get through this, and then we'll get rid of Rauner. And it turns out that actually these guys are more popular with the electorate than.
I think you're absolutely right,
Yeah.
and I think that's so underestimated. I think once you get past the fringes of the edges that make news, so you've got this bunch on the left and this bunch on the right, you've got this giant thing in the middle, and they just want these guys to stop it, okay? They just want them to come to some kind of an accommodation. And I think everybody looks back to the day, and this is an absurd example, but when Tip O'Neill could go to the White House and you know, sit down and sip a glass of scotch with Ronald Reagan, and the next day you'd have magical things happen. And Dan Rostenkowski.
Join Rusty for a steak over in Morton's
yeah.
in D.C.
For all their
out.
faults, I mean, this was when government worked. And now look at this. I mean, Reagan is considered too far left for the Republican Party. I mean, that's what people want. That's what they sent these people there
There's not
for.
going to be a return to collegiality. That's just not going to happen.
No, it doesn't seem like
There's too
it.
much in your face, too many stands. That's not going to happen.
And also, I mean, you know, we're media creatures, right? Oops, I'm sorry. I know that's
a different show.
That's a patented name. I use that every once in a while, and I forget. But we are people of the media, and the nature of how we communicate has just so completely changed. You say something, and it is tweeted to the world, and within moments, everybody's polarized one way or the other. This is a good thing, this is a bad thing. I mean, that's not going to change. That's going to be with us forever, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it's good. I mean,
I didn't say it was, but I'm just.
In fact, if there has been one thing to me, and boy, this is a different topic for a different show, okay? The creation of all this noise and networks that are modeled on that noise have created this fractionalized segment of the population. And they are leading them, and that is now leading the political discourse. I used to say that I used to say, and I really believe this, I used to say that Fox News was a wholly owned subsidiary of the Republican Party. I'm starting to think the Republican Party is a wholly owned subsidiary of Fox News.
Right. Roger Ailes is the guy who runs this country.
Yeah, because now the politicians are pandering to the network. It used to be the other way around.
Yeah.
And there is absolutely nothing healthy about that.
Yeah.
By the way, and I mean, the same's true on the left too.
Oh yeah, but just not as effectively.
Not quite as
because
well done.
Lefties are a little harder to corral.
Yeah.
So the question then is, Dunkin flips, he cuts deals, okay?
Right.
Who's next? How many other people?
Right.
What does Rauner dangle there in order to entice them to leave the fold?
Yeah.
And what does Madigan do to punish him?
Yeah.
What can Madigan do
Well,
to
he doesn't
punish
give
him?
any money. He doesn't direct money to his re-election campaign.
But-
But Dunkin is
And Fields
solidified
an opponent.
enough. He's got a base. He's been around for what, 11, 12 years or so.
Yeah, but I think that one of the calculations that Rauner has made, and maybe this makes him a little smarter than some of us thought he was, is that he really understands that he doesn't have to do very much. He's got to peel off, he's got to purchase 1 or 2 or 3 people, and he's got everything he needs.
Right.
And Dunkin is a perfect example of somebody who was more wobbly than maybe people thought. It wasn't very hard to get Dunkin to come over to the governor's side. And if he gets 2 or 3 more, then there goes the supermajority, and there goes Madigan's ability to basically have anything he wants. So I think it's an incredibly interesting time in Springfield. It just looks really like there's a.
It's always been a chess game, though, and how much true governance is lost when everybody's playing chess.
Yeah, and as you were saying earlier, the idea that government is this give and take and this little bit of horse trading here and there, the same thing is happening on the Republican Party. I mean, on the Republican side of the legislature. Are there 1 or 2 people over there who could be peeled off one way or the other? No one really knows yet.
Well, I think although I think that's much harder.
It would be,
because there is because of this stratified view in the population. They would be crucified if they peeled off.
Yeah.
And I think that they would do that at their own peril.
I don't want to lose the opportunity having both of you here to talk about this, to talk about the Fox Lake Police Glenowitz thing. And it's simply because I know both of you have spent plenty of time out in Fox Lake in the last couple of months. You were both there for the funeral, I think, right? Weren't you?
I was not at the
Oh, you were there. Okay.
I was there. I was out there for much of it, and I was there last Wednesday.
Last Wednesday.
Yeah.
Anyway, in your experience, have you ever seen a story that pivoted as dramatically and quickly as this one did? I mean, from national hero to chump.
Joke, right? G.I. Joke.
Yeah.
As my neighbor called
Yeah.
him.
And by the way, you talked about being reporters.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested what your view is on this. And that is, like day 2. Let's get through day 1, okay? Day 1, we have a police shooting. But day 2 is when the phone calls started to the newsrooms.
Right.
Something ain't right. Something ain't right. I'm a cop. Trust me, something ain't right there.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
we
yeah,
got
yeah.
calls. I got a call from a long-time experienced Chicago retired officer, big picture guy. He says, they didn't do the grid search. I'm watching your helicopter. Where's the grid search? What's going on here? I got an email or a Facebook message from someone anonymous who said, you guys are perpetuating a hoax. This guy committed suicide.
Oh, yeah. Those calls were easily within the first 48 hours.
Right. And then I got an email from a coworker, and she said, this may seem crazy, but did anybody ask about suicide? And my response to her was, no, why? I mean, this guy had the world by the tail.
Yeah.
Everybody loved him.
Yeah.
Why, unless it's a terminal disease, and we don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
But to have been rational in committing an irrational act, to have planned it out like that, to have perpetuated a really evil hoax on his family, his community, the country. Unbelievable. I've never seen anything turn 180 as fast as that.
And by the way, the victims in this thing, the citizens of that town who poured their lives into this love affair with this man.
Yeah.
You know, and by the way, some people fall in love after the fact. I mean, many of those people were hopping on the love affair, which is only appropriate.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was a print shop. Did you go to the print shop?
Yes.
There was a print shop up there where they were making signs for free and handing them out to people to put in their yards. By the hundreds.
Yeah.
They were making these Glenowitz signs that sprung up in every yard up there, and people were lined out onto the street at this print shop to go in and get their sign to stick it in the yard.
So this is such a fascinating question for two seasoned veteran reporters like yourselves. What do you do with that information when people are calling you? If you kind of trust them, if you think these are not tin hat people who are calling you, these might be people who are.
By the way, those people do call us.
Of course they do. I'm sure you get lots and lots of them. I'm sure you get more. It's separating the wheat from the chaff. But where is the point when you say, what can I do with this? Is there anything? I mean, I'm not going to go out there. I'm not going to go out there in the middle of this and say, excuse me, do you think maybe this was a suicide?
Well, we did that. We did that.
Yeah,
we kept asking that question.
You do it, and you try to be as diplomatic as possible.
Yeah, I'll bet you do.
Right?
Yeah.
And you don't get to first base.
Yeah.
And because people pick up on that right away. Get out of my face.
I mean,
Go away.
let me give you an example. And I'm sure you guys had the same discussion in your newsroom, and that was, I had the medical examiner, the coroner, was the first person to use the word suicide on the record. And he did that with me.
And even that was just kind of saying, of course, we're considering all possibilities, including even suicide.
But so in other words, we've been batting suicide around for a long time. Then I get done with the coroner, and I walked in and I said, we've got to have a meeting here because we're about to say suicide on the air for the first time. And how are we going to do that? And I mean, we had a sit-down 3 or 4 management where we decided, the coroner said it. So, but I mean, this was a very, very big discussion because we have this hero that's now, he's pretty much been chiseled on Mount Rushmore.
That's for sure, yeah.
And now we are going to be the first ones to use the S word on television. And that was a big deal.
Same discussion at our place.
Yeah.
But it's just so interesting to me because this is a really great example of how we all just get swept up in this thing. And I can't even think of a better example of everyone, news media and everyone else, just being completely swept up in. When you think about how many hundreds of police officers came to that funeral from
4,000.
But you try your very best not to be led down into the big parade if it is a charade. And we didn't discount these letters, anonymous though they may have been. At the funeral, I was just concerned about body language from a few people. We'd ask them questions, and just the way the funeral was set up was a little bit off kilter to me. We talked to the village administrator when she was first available outside Village Hall, and introduced to her, asked her some questions.
This is the woman who was already
Mary.
Questioning his...
Yeah, she was the one that questioned the funding for the Explorer post. And it was just her body language. She wasn't real direct in answering. I'm thinking, something's not right here. Well, she had to have known that there were things that were... He was supposed to meet with her the day that he took his life.
On that very day.
And she had challenged him the day before.
Yeah, and she knew that. So, there was all this stuff inside her, I'm sure, that she wanted to let go, but she couldn't. And if we're suspecting suicide, the cops were too. They had to, the signs just didn't add up early on. They may not have known, they may not have had all the texts and the emails and everything, but they had to have known early on.
So you have all the people who are planning this thing and doing all the logistics for how this is going to work and where we're going to put these 4,000 cops coming in from all over the country. And they, in their own heads, are thinking, this might be hinky.
Yeah, and imagine, and boy, I wouldn't want to be in their shoes, because as Paul knows, there is nothing on this planet holier than an honor funeral for a fallen police officer. And we've covered hundreds of them. And they have to stage this. I mean, they have to make it look like they believe this. And many of them actually do believe it, but I think that had to be horribly difficult.
And of course, the other thing that's going on too, we just talked about Fox News. I mean, that machinery is already cranked up to, red alert, right? A war on police officers.
Oh, yeah.
We know this was an assassination of a police officer.
Right.
Yeah, there were a lot of signs at the funeral, police lives matter. And what an animated tinderbox the whole thing was.
Yeah. And by the way, that machinery gets cranked up, I think, unfairly because it gins up emotions that never were present before. And I think one of the most contemptible things that has happened is this straw man that has been created by some of those forces that, Democrats hate cops, Democrats hate first responders, Democrats hate the military, which is just not true. But yet, this chimera has been created, and these things take on a life of their own.
Yeah, it just it erodes trust, and that's the real casualty in this thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could bring this home in a kind of a grisly way to talk about the other thing that's happening, or police related, that's happening in Chicago. Cass wrote about it yesterday. A number of reporters have talked about this video that exists of the killing of Laquan McDonald. I mean, what we know of it is that, I guess we know these as facts, that a bunch of police officers were involved in trying to subdue this guy. He ended up running down the middle of Pulaski Avenue down on the south side. And then, exactly how it comes about, we don't know, but a single police officer ends up shooting him, 16 times?
16 or 17.
And so many issues have been raised by this, not the least of which is that none of the other police officers participated in this, what's being called an execution. But it's that same thing. It's like, aren't there some Chicago police officers right now who are sitting down and saying, I saw this happen and I know it was wrong, but I can't do anything about it? I can't say anything about it? I mean, Cass says that if this video is ever shown, and it's in court now, it's going to rip the top off of this city. It's going to be so incendiary.
What's funny about that is that you do get this tired old saw about shouting fire in a crowded theater. I am such a big believer in openness and transparency, which, by the way, that word is used a lot at City Hall.
I know Ron Mamel is running the most transparent administration in
false
history.
pretenses.
I've read that. Yeah.
But I think that video has to be seen, and I think it depends on the context in which it is presented. I mean, they can do a lot. The city can say, we're going to release this video, and here's what we're going to do as we release it. And that they could prevent that. They could prevent that outburst, or they could handle it poorly and release the video.
It'll be released.
And all hell could break loose.
Yeah.
I think it'll be released. It's just a question of, as you say, how the setup to it takes place.
But this shooting happened, when was it? I've lost track of it. I think it was last year,
It was last year, wasn't it?
last year, if I'm not. Could be wrong on that, but it was a long time ago. And the city and the police department and the internal investigative units and so forth have had more than adequate time to look at this and take some action, and they have, as far as we know, not. So if and when that video is released, the first question is going to be, why haven't you guys done anything about this up until now?
And that's a fair question.
Well, then the question would go to the Independent Police Review Authority, IPRA. Their process is long and involved. They recommended not long ago that an officer be fired because he shot at someone in a fleeing car, not for the shooting, but because he lied about it in the aftermath. That was their ability to get rid of him. There's new leadership at IPRA. I don't know that that means that cases are expedited. This one clearly hasn't been. The incendiary nature of the tape, I'm sure, is a factor. I think the city said to release it now would just, throw gas on the fire.
And questions do have to be raised about the other officers who were not participants in it, but witnessed it, and surely at least a couple of them. Again, we're making many assumptions.
Well, we don't know. They may have been interviewed, and they may have given a full-blown account as to their opinion on whether or not the officer was justified in firing 16 times.
Or they may, in fact, be people of conscience who also, though, live in that police world where things are done by either procedure or loyalty or things like that, which I don't fault.
It exists in every profession.
In
It
every,
exists in ours.
Yeah.
right. It certainly does. It certainly does. When a journalist gets in trouble, journalists circle the wagons.
Yeah.
Unless
probably-
that journalist is bad.
Yeah, probably, though not quite to the extent, I think, that there's the blue sheet.
No, there's probably nothing that is quite to that extent. Hey, we're down to the last couple of minutes here. A quick round of things. Rob Feeder raised the issue of whether the city should sell Channel 20, WYCC. He says it's worth about $400 million and that the city should get. Do you agree with the Feeder's assessment on that? Do you think it's something the city should get rid of?
I think, keeping in mind that I don't know what I'm talking
None of us do.
Okay.
There are three people who have no knowledge of this.
The city's finances are in such appalling shape, and at a time when we're asking the taxpayers to go to their wallets just to keep the garbage trucks rolling, I think that it would not be inappropriate for the city to tap into the sale of an asset that's worth so much money when the kinds of things that television station offers are available elsewhere.
If those involved in the broadcast who are learning the whole business of journalism or television production can achieve that goal, be guaranteed to achieve that goal, and the city still realize some money from the sale, yeah.
For the record, I have commented a couple of times on the Rob Feeder thing and said that, at least in theory, that seems to be right. But, it's the same old problem. They're not going to get $400 million. They might get $100 million for it. And that $100 million will not even, it's not even one tiny brick in the wall of what's needed to solve the problem. And I just kind of get twitchy when I see this thing of like, oh, here's an asset, let's sell it, let's get rid of it. It might be worth a lot more money in 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 years when we need even more spectrum for cellular, and it might be prudent to just hold on to it.
Right.
So I think it needs to be considered in all sorts of different ways. And the idea that everything could just be put on cable is not, as we know. There are issues with that because not everybody has cable, and fewer people have cable. So, it's a very. I think it's a more complicated question than just sell it and throw the money into the gaping maw, because it wouldn't even last a nanosecond.
So you're saying see parking meter.
See
Kind of.
Skyway.
Well, more like Skyway than parking meter. Yeah, I mean, what do we get for that? And what might it have been worth?
Well, and there have been occasions where there were near misses. I mean, look at how they nearly unloaded Midway Airport, which would have been a colossal disaster.
Exactly.
Okay.
And kudos to our mayor for not doing that. Could we? No, we don't have time to talk about that. We don't have time. All right, we got 30 seconds.
Oh no, you want to tell folks what we're skipping?
Yeah, no. They'll just get mad at us. 20 seconds. The CTU fake vote they held the other day, is it real? Does it mean anything?
To me, it's real, and it is. I think that the city underestimates to the extent to which the populace is sympathetic to the teachers.
In the interest of time, I would agree with that.
What a pleasure to deal with guys who know how to talk the clock. Wow. All right. And we have 12 seconds left, which is just enough time for me to tell you, you've been watching Chicago Newsroom. It's a production of Can TV. You can watch us anytime by going right here to this particular address and see us there. And you know what? We're going to have these guys come back on Thanksgiving Day. Watch us 2 weeks from right now. I think it's going to be a fun show. See ya. Bye.